For a lot of people, family is everything. The thought of doing anything awful to them is unthinkable. For others, however, they are disposable figures that they won't miss. One person in this school of thought is Peter Lundin, a man from Denmark who was responsible for 4 murders, including that of his own mother. Welcome to Twisted Minds. My name is James, and today we take a look at the case of Peter Lundin, a Danish serial killer who was described as being born to kill. And after hearing this story, how cold and selfish he was, you'll most likely be inclined to agree.
I'm not a criminal. I'm not a menace to society.
Peter Kenneth Bostrom Lundin was born in Roskilde on the 15th of February, 1972. His mother, Anna Schaffner Lundin, was German, while his father, Ole Bostrom Lundin, was Danish, but spent much of his teenage years in America with his parents. Anna and Ole met when his father was stationed as an American soldier in West Germany just after the war. Ole later worked as a bricklayer and even built the family house. Unfortunately, after a life-threatening blood clot, he had to stop working. Because of this, the family had moved to the United States when Peter was just 9 years old, where Ole and Anna started running a motel in Florida. In 1984, the family moved to Maggie Valley, North Carolina. But a few years later, Ole and Ann broke up, with Ole taking Peter with him. The pair moved all around the US, first heading toward Los Angeles, before moving on to New York, Boston, and finally Miami, where Ole started working as a bricklayer again to make ends meet. Eventually, Anna and Ole made up, with the mother finally rejoining the family. During his school days in Miami, Peter worked at several places to make some extra cash, including a position as a cleaner in a restaurant. When Peter was 16, he dropped out of school and started working at his father's construction workplace instead. It was here that he began to puff the magic dragon, if you get my drift, as well as cocaine. At this time, Peter also found his love for a new sport, as he described it, which was visiting as many prostitutes that he could at brothels dotted around the US. Peter might have considered this a type of sport, but I certainly don't agree. The family eventually moved back to Maggie Valley, where Peter began selling weed to other students of his local high school. It was while they were in Maggie Valley that the family home became chaotic. In fact, neighbors would often call the police after hearing violent outbursts. But miraculously, a police report was never made. Ole grew withdrawn and depressed, while Anna longed for the good days. Since Peter and his mother went their separate ways for several years, their relationship was changed for the worse. Eventually, Ole had enough of Anna smashing up everything in the family home and Peter's violent temper, choosing to move into a campsite on his own. Although things were rocky for the family, I don't think any of them saw what was coming next. In early April 1991, when Peter was still a teenager, the 19-year-old decided to head out to a party. Before attending, he visited his father, who said he wanted to move back into the family home again. Before heading straight to the party, Peter decided to return home and take a bath and pick up some things. As soon as he approached, he saw his mother waiting to greet him. As he was in a rush, he briefly explained to Anna about his father's plans, something she wanted to talk more about. Peter quickly picked up his things, ran out to the car to drop off his stuff, but realized he had left his keys inside the house. Running back inside, his mother stood in his way, to which Peter told her that he was in a hurry. As Peter headed toward the car again, Peter pushed past his mother with force, knocking her over. Not bothering to check if she was okay, Peter hopped in his car and drove away. Peter eventually returned in the morning while it was still dark outside. He could immediately feel that something was wrong, a suspicion that turned out to be true, as he discovered his mom lying in the same place she had fallen hours earlier. He quickly found out that she was dead and, in a panic, drove to his father. Peter did not know what to do and did not think about calling the police, as he did not trust them. So, just like any rational, normal person would do, Peter decided to go to bed. A few days later, Peter wrapped his mother in a blanket and plastic and tied it with rope and tape. Unbelievably, his father, Ole, helped him with this task and even drove with him to the beach Cape Hatteras on the east coast of the United States. Here, in the dead of night, they buried the body of Anna Schaffner. Peter and Ole agreed that they would never talk about this gruesome event again, and that they would tell people that Anna had traveled back to Germany. For over 6 months, their secret remained safe. That is, until the body of Anna was found on the beach. Hurricane Andrew had torn the body out of the sand, with passers-by discovering the decomposing body.
This is where the body was found, located in this area by a visitor. It didn't have the consistency of a human being.
Anna was identified in May 1992, and Peter and Ole were taken in for questioning. The pair stuck to the story that Anna left for Germany, but police were suspicious, telling them they couldn't leave the state. Instead of staying, they went to Michigan and then to Toronto. It was here that they were found, staying at an airport motel with airline tickets to London booked. It turned out that their plan was to go from London to Denmark and then on to Australia. This breach in conditions sent Peter and Ole straight to jail. Ole was released 1 week later, after his sister paid for his bail. Unfortunately for Peter, however, he wasn't so lucky, and the young man spent a year in jail until the trial started.
One dark afternoon, my mother attacked me, and the only thing I did was push her away. I've never laid a hand on my mother ever. And when she fell down, her neck broke. And when I say if there's anything I could have done to help her, I would have.
Eventually, Ole was given 2 years for helping bury Anna, while Peter was charged with manslaughter, which was later changed to negligent manslaughter. According to police, Anna had died of suffocation after she suffered 2 fractures to the cervical vertebrae that had pinched the nerves that help people breathe. At the trial, Peter elaborated on the events that happened that night, with him saying that his mother was insistent on giving him a haircut before going to the party. Peter was sentenced to 20 years behind bars, but his lawyer eventually got that down to 15. While in prison, Peter received a letter from Nordisk Film and TV, in which he was invited to take part in a program about Danish people in the States. Excited for the exposure, he agreed. The show, The Dream of America, was shown in December 1994 and showed Peter's life behind bars. After the show aired, a lot of Danish women started writing letters to him. Peter saw this as a great way to make money, telling the girls he was falling in love with them, but he needed money for food and legal assistance. The plan worked, and the money began to trickle in. One of the women he genuinely liked, however, was Tina. She was 31 years old, divorced, and lived with her young daughter. They had been exchanging letters for a year when they finally met for the first time. Hitting it off, the two got married on March 20th, 1996, with Tina coming to visit 4 times in total. Despite killing his own mother, Peter was freed in just 7 years into his sentence because of a lack of space in the prison system. Unfortunately for Peter, who wanted to remain in the States, he was deported to Denmark. On June 4th, 1999, Peter arrived at Copenhagen Airport and was met by Ole, Tina, and her teenage daughter, who he immediately moved in with. Peter found it difficult to love in a new country, especially after spending so many years behind bars. He started training a lot and took anabolic steroids to make himself bigger. He started looking for other women to stop the boredom that was settling in. In fact, Peter sought out a woman named Giddy, who also sent him letters while in prison, who he began hooking up with. Peter also started pursuing his old passion, scouring the local brothels for prostitutes. He even made dedicated routes for brothels so that he could efficiently visit as many as he could in a single day. Peter's record was 10 brothels in 1 day. Tina eventually found out that he was visiting prostitutes and started throwing him out of the house on a regular basis. In the autumn of 1999, Tina had enough of her cheating husband and ended the relationship despite being pregnant. 2 weeks later, after moving into a hotel, Peter met 36-year-old Mary Ann Peterson. She had lost her husband 6 months previously and had 2 children, Brian, age 13, and Dennis, who was 11. Before dying, her late husband had started a brothel where Mary Ann had been employed as a brothel mother, looking after the girls who worked there. It was here that Peter met Mary Ann, You just know that the guy has been spending way too much time there when he starts hanging out with management. As the romance blossomed, Peter came up with a plan to take over the brothel and immediately moved in with Mary Ann and her 2 boys. While this was going on, the plot was thickening, with Tina changing her mind and wanting her husband to come back to her. Wanting the best of both worlds, Peter agreed to move back in with Tina, while also telling Mary Ann that he was only staying a few nights to help Tina while she was pregnant. Peter lived for 6 months, leading his double life, with only his father knowing the truth. According to Peter, he did not care about either of the women, but one was pregnant with his child and the other was his path to success. So he had to keep them both sweet. While all this was going on, Peter met a 17-year-old Romanian girl named Gabriella, who would smoke weed and take cocaine with her. Seriously, how did Peter find the time to spin so many plates? Who would have thought that being a grade A sleazebag could be a full-time job? In May 2000, when Peter was 28 years old, Tina gave birth to their son. While Tina brought life into the world, however, the very next month, Peter decided to take life away. One day, after not sleeping for several days straight, Peter smoked some hash and took cocaine. He then attended a summer party at the school of Mary Ann's sons, in which an argument between the couple broke out. When they got home, Mary Ann received a phone call, in which Peter got wildly jealous because he thought she was being too nice for it to be a customer. This ended up in a fight where Peter pulled Mary Ann up to the bedroom and threw her violently down on the bed. According to the killer, Peter claimed that she died by accident, just like his mother. What definitely wasn't an accident, however, were the murders of her 2 young boys, so that there were no witnesses to the crime. After the boys stopped breathing, he dismembered the bodies of the Peterson family, even separating the soft remains from the bones. The soft remains were put in trash bags, while the bones were left in the freezer. After a grueling day of butchering corpses, he returned to Tina like nothing had happened. On June 19, 2000, Peter went to Metro in Gloucester, where he bought an axe, rubber gloves, plastic bags, and cleaning products. To add further insult, he used Mary Ann's deceased husband's bank card to make the payments. He then went back to the house and cut the frozen bodies into smaller pieces and put them in plastic bags. Peter knew that the bags would be picked up and incinerated, so he drove around several neighborhoods, scattering the bags among other people's trash. As one final smokescreen, Peter put a note on the family's front door claiming that they had gone on holiday and that Peter should stay behind to paint and sort the house, as they intended to move away as soon as they came back. On July 3, 2000, Mary Ann, Brian, and Dennis were declared missing, and Peter was swiftly arrested. Police found traces of human tissue in the basement of the house, and part of Mary Ann's belongings being held by Tina and Peter's father. Yep, once again, Peter dragged his father into his crimes. No doubt lying to get his help, just like he did when he killed his mother. With evidence piling up, Peter told police that he found the bodies of the 2 boys stabbed to death, with Mary Ann's body nearby. He claimed that she had taken an overdose shortly after taking the lives of her children, but was still alive. This led the man to beating her out of anger. After that, he decided he would dispose of the corpses so that the truth didn't come out. Of course, the police didn't buy this awful lie for 1 second. They do say what goes around comes around, and while Peter was being held in Bridso-Salil State Prison, he was beaten up by 10 inmates with iron piles and other things while in the fitness room. He had his nose and ribs broken, had a concussion, a huge cut on his face, and ended up in the hospital. He was then moved to solitary confinement for 3 months, while the 2 inmates who were responsible for the attack had their sentences extended. It's miraculous that Peter survived this attack and had no life-changing injuries as part of it. The murder trial lasted 10 days, and on March 15, 2001, Peter Lundin was sentenced to life imprisonment. Peter's father, Ole, was also sentenced to 4 months behind bars for the theft of Mary Ann's things. During the trial, Peter described what really happened that night, with jealousy causing him to get angry, and how Mary Ann threatened to call Tina and tell her everything about the affair. This led to Peter violently striking the woman with so much force that her head snapped back, breaking her spine. He then went on to break the necks of her 2 young boys after they witnessed the murder of their mother. I think it's important to mention that the investigators believe that the boys were killed in the basement and not the bedroom, as Peter claimed. Also, although they believe that the boys had their necks broken, they couldn't have been broken in the way he described. Could this have been another example of Peter downplaying his sickening actions to somehow sound a little bit better? While incarcerated, Peter Lundin was examined by psychiatrists, who quickly identified him as having dissocial personality disorder, also known as psychopathy. In fact, the Swedish psychiatrist Sten Levander gave him a score of 39 out of 40 on the psychopath checklist. After the trial, Peter changed his name to Niall Schaffner, and women started writing to him again. Just like before, he began writing back to them, but this time he was looking for love, not money. After several relationships, Peter eventually married a 26-year-old woman called Bettina Brons in 2014, even having a son with the cold-hearted killer. Since July 2009, Peter spent over 200,000 Danish krone, which is around $29,000, on telephone calls to his father and the woman he was interested in. He did attempt to see his firstborn son, but was rejected every time by the state office and Tina. In 2017, Lundin and Bettina Brons got divorced. It was a hard process for Bettina, later explaining how the relationship became very toxic, even with Lundin behind bars. He demanded that she visit him every single day, even on days that she was extremely sick with a fever. Now that she is free of the monster, just like Tina, Bettina doesn't want her son to have anything to do with his father, a decision that we can all agree with. Thanks for tuning in to Twisted Minds. That was the case of Peter Lundin, and why don't you go ahead and click on one of the 2 videos on your screen for another one of our videos.